Okay.
Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Good afternoon. I'm Chris Trumbauer. I'm your friendly chair for the Crownsville Advisory Committee meeting. Welcome to our second meeting and our first virtual one on Zoom. You can see the agenda is on the screen. Hopefully you all can see that. It was distributed before the meeting. We are going to have one slight audible to call in that the county executive will be joining us, but maybe a minute or two late because he's coming from directly from another event. So if he isn't here in a minute or two, we will jump over his vision and we'll do the summary of the public comments. But before we get into that, I did want to give anyone an opportunity, if there is a committee member or two that weren't at our first meeting. We did do a round of introductions, so I want to give everyone a chance to do that. So I think we had one or two that wasn't here last month, and if that's the case, could you just introduce yourself to the group if you weren't here last time?
Hi, Chris, and everyone. It's Lisa Rodvian. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
I'm in my car for the moment, but I hope to be in a fixed location in about 15 minutes. And I'm very sorry I couldn't be there last time. I actually had COVID, so I hope you forgive me. Actually, maybe you would thank me for not attending, but I'm very glad to be here. And I watched your meeting on the video and have read all the notes. So I'm really grateful. I'm looking forward to working with everyone here on, making the vision for taking the first steps of making the vision for Crownsville into reality.
Great. Well, very good. And just for the record, I'll let everyone know that Council Member Rodvian is the council member for the 6th district, which includes Crownsville. She also is a pretty significant upgrade from the district's former representation. So glad to have you with us today, Lisa. And is there anyone else that wasn't with us?
Yes, I was not able to join you all. Hi, everybody. It's Izzy Scheikoff. Really excited to be on this group. I live in West Annapolis with my wife. I was retired and got unretired and recruited to work with Secretary Roque at the Maryland Department of Aging. I also serve on the Maryland Civil Rights Commission. I think that's how I got on this group, or was asked to get on this group.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining, Izzy. And I think everybody else that I see was here, or are we missing one more?
Chris, this is Cecily Bedwell. I'm actually not on the committee, but I was asked to join. I am representing the consultant team who's been hired for the master planning. So I may be joining. I think Christine probably was the one who forwarded the invitation. So I'm happy to be here and start to listen in. We just began about a couple weeks ago. So we've been out to the site and are going to spend a good amount of time with the different committees, listening to the conversations and taking them what we can.
Great. Great. Well, thank you for joining us. Happy to have you on board as well. All right. Well, we do have the county exec joining. Before I turn it over to him, I did just want to ask if there was any other items that any committee members wanted to place on the agenda, or are we good for today's meeting? All right. Seeing no virtually raised hands, I think we're good. So it's my pleasure now to introduce our county executive, Stuart Pittman. I think we've all seen characterizations of his vision for the property, but we've got him live and virtually in person, and he's going to share in his own words his vision, and then I think he'll have time to take a couple questions from committee members. So Stuart, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I'm running a few minutes late, but no excuses. Sorry I missed your first meeting. I think I was out there later that day and with another group doing a tour. And so mostly I want to say thank you. You guys have got a huge task before you. A lot of people have a huge task before them. And yeah, I'm to blame. It's quite an undertaking. But everybody seems to get what we're trying to do. I think many of you were at the town hall, and I got to say that was the best town hall I've ever been to in my life. There seemed to be not only a lot of people from a lot of different perspectives, but that everything seemed to be aligned somehow. It was almost a feeling in the room that this is the place, this is the heart of our county where healing can take place, and we're taking something that is really needs to be healed, needs to be fixed itself, the property, the buildings, all of that, and it sort of symbolizes where we are as a county and even maybe a world. So, and I think that's why people get it so quickly. You know, you've got committees that are going to be working under you, 4 committees that also have their hands full. And you know, I hear little bits and pieces as I go, you know, little bits and pieces about infrastructure that are, you know, somewhat terrifying. So I'm glad we've got really smart people working on that. And we understand that's going to be helpful. I'm glad that we have a consultant on board. I think these guys, from what I've heard, are really real pros. And that's going to be really useful, I think, to have real experience who's done projects of this scope before and help guide us in the visioning and the planning. You know, it's going to be a little weird. It's going to probably for you, you know, some of you may be the kinds of people who want everything to fit into a little box and fit into a timeline and a process, and the process has to be perfectly followed. And then you're going to have maybe me and some other committee come out and say, oh, but there's this great opportunity, we need to move now on it. And I think there has to be some ability to do that in this case, because we know we have institutions that are there that we want. There are opportunities that are here now, and we have to be able to move on some of those opportunities and decide which ones to move on. And then others that might have to wait for the big master plan. And so that might be challenging for you, but I think it's sort of baked into what we have before us. I keep hearing of cool ideas. In fact, Christine gave me a list of all of them and asked me to score them at one point, I think. And then she got back my scores, and how come they're all like 1s and 2s and aren't any 4s and 5s here? Because they're all great ideas, maybe. So I don't know if there was much help on that. I do want to mention that one came up recently that I want you to be aware of, because, and maybe you know about it already, but I was invited over to Bowie State University, and it was all of their leadership, all of their top people were there, and they kind of laid out their interest in this site and why. And part of it's historical, but part of it's that they're bursting at the seams, and they're looking for a place they can do a health and wellness satellite campus. Nothing huge, I don't think, but they haven't even decided all of that. But you know, that their campus started in 1911, the same year that Crownsville opened. Their students testified in the Maryland General Assembly about the conditions there back when it was all coming out that there were some major issues, and they followed it. And so I was really inspired by what they said. You know, I believe that we need some significant institutions that have the ability to raise serious money in there. And that is one of those institutions. You know, we've heard also from BWMC, and we'll keep hearing from other big institutions as well, I think, and that's where it'll probably get quite complicated. You know, we hear a lot of questions about things that might be controversial in the community as well. You know, we're talking about a road that's already got a lot of traffic on it, and while there used to be a lot of people working there, a lot of the housing that was built around there, and a lot of the other traffic maybe wasn't there at that time. So there will be proposals that will create traffic, and I don't think there's any way around that. And we're going to have to address some of those things. So we will cross that bridge when we come to it. But while everybody's all aligned now, the time will come where they're not. So we have to be prepared for that. But that is sort of true of any change. But the good news is that we're changing from an eyesore, one way people have described it, to an opportunity for something better. I think the rec and park side of things hopefully will be less controversial because and that's some of the stuff that we can move on more quickly, I hope, because people want public access to the property. People want to enjoy the nature, those amazing trees and things. And I'm really excited about that piece moving more quickly. And then hopefully that creates some of the goodwill that that we can ride off of. That's all I've got, really. I mean, I'm also really excited about telling the history, and I'm really excited about Antonia Hilton's book that's going to be coming out any day now, or any week now. I believe it's already, they've got some hard copies. I've not seen one. I understand that Oprah has one, and that it's going to tell the story, I think, in a way that is more nuanced than what's been told before. The last superintendent who was there, the first African-American superintendent, his family has been interviewed, and she's looked at his era as well as some of the previous eras. And there are a lot of people in this county who either worked there themselves or had family who worked there, or patients as well. In fact, there are even people who were patients who are alive who Antonia has interviewed. And I think it's going to be an amazing read, but it's also going to get a lot of national attention. And suddenly there's going to be a spotlight on Crownsville at a really good time. So we're just going to have to navigate our way through. And I appreciate that we have so many brilliant people stepping up.
Well, thank you, Mr. County Exec. Before I open it up to questions, if you have a couple minutes to stick around, I did want to ask, we're always hearing different ideas or questions about what kind of things could happen on the property. And I know that we're not setting necessarily hard yeses or nos at this point yet, but it might be helpful to the committee if you could outline some of your preferences of the types of uses that you would like to see going forward, or maybe some things that you're not as open to going forward, because as everyone does their work in their subcommittees to try and make recommendations, I think knowing how that might be compatible with your overall vision would be helpful.
Well, I mean, I think the lens of equity and the lens of, health and wellness in general are going to be useful for this. There will be a lot of interest, business, nonprofit, others who see land and want space. And if it is just a place to do business, this ain't going to be, just a regular office park. So I think there's enough demand for health and wellness work and equity work that and health and wellness is a pretty broad category, of course. Health and wellness for all. A park is health and wellness for sure. So that's, that's the prism that I'm looking at it through, and I hope you guys will as well. But we also have to consider, who's got the resources to actually take a building and fix it up and do it right. Or in some cases, tear something down and build something that's going to be compatible with the rest of the, both the look and the feel and the purpose there. The nonprofit center that we're doing is something I'm pretty excited about. That's a building that the county already owned and isn't in as bad shape, more recently used, and has some tenants in it now. And Jennifer Purcell's working on that, and I'm excited about that. I would be excited about that wherever it was located, but I think of it as a great sort of place from which other things can get spawned as well. So I would keep an eye on what's going on there. I don't know if she's involved or at what level or how that's working, but I know Pam is very involved in that. It's going to be a place maybe a base where people can go, at least a place where the bathrooms hopefully will work or something. and go out from there. So that's all. But
All right. Well, thank you. Do any advisory committee members have any questions for the county exec while we have him? Even with all these elected officials, none of you have questions?
I want to
Hey,
know how
Chris.
Stuart and Lisa got so quickly from Davidsonville to here. Or are you, you got here before I did?
I have one question. What is the building you're talking about, Stuart? The one which one is that where the Pascal group is?
Yeah, what is it, 43 Community Place? It's
41, I
yeah,
think.
41, they
Right.
may be 43. Yeah, so it's the mirror building to the Pascal one. It's actually, Pascal had been trying to get into the building they're in for years. And then when I came in, I said yes. And they went in and they did some improvements, and they're running their facility there. They really wanted the other building as well. And we said no. We had uses for it. We also didn't believe, when we knew that they couldn't get the permits from the state to do the beds there. And so it was recommended that from the perspective of the work that they do, they try not to have it all congregate in one area. So, but just as a historical note, there was a pretty aggressive campaign with lobbyists and everybody to get that building for that. A lot of nonprofits were involved in the planning of the nonprofit center and are still involved. So it's going to be pretty broadly supported by nonprofits, but that's the building.
Any other questions for the county exec?
Yeah, I do have a question. So
I'm
with
sorry, who's speaking, please?
this is James Seeger. I'm not on one of the committees at this point, but I just have a question for the executive. With the property being transferred back to Anne Arundel County from the state, would that rule out the possibility of University of Maryland potentially utilizing the site?
No.
Okay.
You have to deal with the county rather than the state.
Okay.
I will clarify that when the state transferred it to the county, there were certain restricted uses of what, could be done and couldn't be done. But I don't think there'd be any preclusion from partnering with, the state of Maryland or the University of Maryland system or any other institute of higher learning if the use was compatible with what we want to see happen there.
Right. Okay. Appreciate that.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Stuart. And I know you've got a busy day, but you're welcome to stay on. We're going to have subcommittee updates where a lot of the real work is getting done. So you're welcome to stay on as long as your schedule allows.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. So next I wanted to really quickly, in our last meeting, there was some question and discussion about the public comments and how they would be routed. Hannah, if you're able to share that summary sheet that we sent out, Hannah and her team have been doing a good job of kind of intaking the comments that come in on the email that we've set up for this. And then as we discussed last month, our process will be kind of air traffic controlling that and routing that to hopefully one of the 4 subcommittees. And so this is a summary of what we've gotten so far and how we've distributed it. Of course, this is somewhat subjective. Some comments don't exactly meet one committee's scope or another, but this is our first attempt to route it to an appropriate place. So these comments will be making it to the subcommittee groups, and then subcommittee groups can consider them, can share them with other subcommittees if they think that they go across kind of boundaries. And then that can help guide the types of things that you're looking at. So this was sent to you all, so you should have it in PDF form, but this is what it looks like. It looks like health and wellness and rec and parks are competing to see who can get the most bullet points there. No surprise really, but this will be an ongoing effort where we'll continue to get public comments and continue to route them through the subcommittees. So do we have any questions about that process or any of the particular routings at this point? Great. Well, thank you to our subcommittee chairs for in advance for your participation in that. And now we're getting to, I think, which will be the most, I don't know, meaty part of our agenda, which is subcommittee reports. So my understanding is each subcommittee has been able to meet at least once and have at least a introductory meeting. And so I'm going to go around and call on each of our subcommittee chairs to give a brief report out, and then committee members can ask questions if needed. And we have 4 subcommittees, and they're listed in no particular order, but that happens to have Jackie Alsup and Cultural History up first. So Jackie, if you're prepared to give us a little summary of the good work that your team is doing.
Certainly, Chris. The history and the Culture and History Subcommittee did meet on October the 16th. And at our meeting, the subcommittee members that were present was Heather Ersted, Susan Klein, Elizabeth Hughes, Chandler Compton, Dr. Carol Benson, Linda Marshall, Dr. Montford Love, and there were 3 staff persons present: Jansen E. Evelyn, Jane Cox, and Kaylee Schultz. And briefly recapping the meeting, our subcommittee held its inaugural meeting. The agenda included a lengthy round of introductions, including our thoughts on how we hope the Crownsville Hospital Memorial Park story would be told. Collectively, the group is excited to explore creative ways to tell the story of Crownsville for all ages while maintaining its cultural preservation. The subcommittee requested to tour Crownsville, which the county staff is working on and hopes to have happen before convening again in November. The Culture History Subcommittee agreed to meet virtually the majority of the time and reserve in-person meetings for when it was really needed. The 2 agenda items were the signage update and the oral history update. Janice Hayes Williams was unable to attend the meeting, so we tabled that until our next meeting. Regarding the signage, Jane Cox from Office of Planning and Zoning briefed the committee about the Visit Annapolis and Anne Arundel County Civil Rights Walking Tour and having signage at Crownsville. And that's a brief recap of our meeting.
Great. Well, thank you.
Go
ahead.
Okay. The charge of our committee was to provide guidance on the cultural heritage, interpretation, and commemoration of the history of Crownsville Hospital Memorial Park, how we tell the story, and also to include the cemetery and provide advice and guidance on the redevelopment of the Maryland Historical Trust easement area. So that was the charge of the committee.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Sounds like you guys have a pretty full scope there. I did notice that you mentioned the cemetery, and I just want everyone to realize that there is an ongoing effort that predates this committee for the cemetery memorial, and that is proceeding. And Jansen, I see we have you. Do you have any updates on the timing of the cemetery memorial that you can share with the group?
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Jansen Evelyn. In terms of the memorial, as Chris noted, this has predated the formation of the steering committee. We're at the point now in that process where the sign will be, I don't know the appropriate word, not sizzled out. It'll be notated. All the information has been, it's the final design stage has already been approved. We're currently just waiting on some verification of a few dates to make sure that everything is historically accurate, because once we do this, there are no redos. But once that's completed, I anticipate that the memorial will be up within the next few months, and definitely in time for early spring's Say My Name ceremony, which Friends of Crownsville, they have put on for about a little over 2 decades. And I anticipate that next year's Say My Name ceremony will be bigger and grander than it's ever been.
Great, thanks, Jansen, and thanks, Jackie, for your report. This is probably a good time to mention, if any at-large members or advisory committee members want to get involved with a particular subcommittee or more than one, just reach out to the chairs of those subcommittees, and you can find those on the agenda. I'm sure they'd be welcome to have you. But for our elected officials and some of our other at-large members, you're not assigned to any particular subcommittee, but you are welcome and encouraged to participate with them. Next, we'll go to Dr. Pam Brown. She's going to give us an update on the Health and Wellness Committee. Sure, they've been busy.
Thank you, Chris. We really did have a very good meeting. It feels like very weighty work to me and very important work. It's a very diverse committee. Some of the present tenants are on it, and there are others on it who've got very definite ideas of what should happen at Crownsville. So we really spent some time brainstorming about what were the underlying principles that we were going to work with, so that when we do disagree, and I can promise you we will disagree, where are we going to come back to? What are the important things that we believe in? And that notion of healing was really present. So I was glad to hear Stuart say that, because obviously Crownsville has this terribly checkered history that's so related to everything in our county and country. So how do we heal from that? And being the Health and Wellness Committee, how does that health and wellness build in to that sense of healing this past? And so we talked a lot about that, a lot about the importance of connecting and collaborating, not getting, different ideas of what should happen be in the way of the importance of partnership and connection. And then obviously, most importantly, equity. How do we build equity into everything we do from this point forward? I remember Pete talking about an equity lens. Are there tools that we could all use together to make sure that we really are focused on equity? Our next meeting will be focused on data. We decided we wanted to be a data-driven committee. So we will be looking at both the needs in the county, the needs in that area, and the sorts of barriers there always are to meeting those needs. And to that end, the committee came up with a set of questions for both the county and the overall committee. They talked about the potential for transportation. There's probably not been any decisions made about that yet, but for those of you who live in the world that I live in, transportation in this county, wherever you are, can be a problem as you try to access health and wellness. We weren't sure that we had a resident on our committee from Crownsville. We thought that was important. So I'm asking the county generally, do we know residents that want to be on committees? Have we got one on ours? It felt like that was very, very important to us. And then we got a bit down into the details here, but we talked about what maps are available that show specific areas that we might access. I think there's still a lot of unknowns there, and we talked about that, but if there is anything available, we'd like to see it. And then are there tools that the county and this overall committee would like to use that would bring us all to a place where we were considering equity in everything we did and building both policies and practices that were really based in equity. So that's it from me. I have to say, I am delighted to be part of this. I really like my committee, and I think it's going to be extraordinarily good work for all of us.
Great. Well, thanks, Pam. We're excited that you're excited. You certainly, your committee has a very large breadth and scope of things to consider. So I know I'm personally looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with. All right, so we're going to go from health and wellness to infrastructure. A very abrupt transition, but let's see what Allison has for us.
Thanks, Chris, and good to be with the group. The infrastructure committee is really active and has a lot of momentum towards this process. And I'm excited to be working with a group that's so committed to this. The group has met a couple of times. We've had at least one facility tour. I think there was a second one that a subset of our subcommittee did. We've received drawings and maps of all the buildings on the property to give us a better sense of exactly what infrastructure is there already, or at least what buildings are there. At our last meeting, we got some information about the master plan process. Cecily, this was slightly before your company was chosen, so we were not told exactly who it was going to be, but we knew that you would be announced and joining very, very soon. And I know our group has a lot of interest in hearing from you all. So I appreciate the fact that you'll be available for that. We are meeting tomorrow, and one of the presentations we'll have is from a committee member who was involved in a hospital transition project like this in Washington State, to just give the group an overview of how that went, how it happened, just to provide some context for how this has been done elsewhere. We're going to continue to meet monthly, and one thing that our committee requested is for them to establish liaisons between ours and the rest of the subcommittees. The reason they want to do this is because obviously a lot of what we recommend in terms of what infrastructure is needed will be based on the needs and decision-making process and recommendations of the other three subcommittees. So I'll be reaching out to those chairs, maybe after our meeting tomorrow, to get a sense of who might be interested in doing that, just to let you know that we have folks who will really be interested in knowing what recommendations you have. So excited to be doing this work, and thanks for including me.
Great, well, thanks, Allison. Good report. We're going to move on to our final subcommittee, batting cleanup. Scotty Himes for Rec and Parks.
Hey, everybody, I'm Scott Himes. I'm happy to be part of this, as some of you heard already. We had a wonderful meeting just last night, actually, with our subcommittee, and it's a very exciting group. Let me just say there's a lot of great energy there, a lot of great knowledge. And of course, you have great staff support over at Rec and Parks. Very impressive presentation that made a lot of sense to everybody. But of course, everybody still wants to see the facilities and see what's there. So the subcommittee has agreed that we need a tour, and that's being set up right now. We should be there, I believe, in a couple of weeks. But the main thing that came out of this is that there's a lot of diverse energy, a lot of diverse desires for certain things, but it's also tying in a lot of the stuff that's been going on. A lot of the people involved have been part of the other processes of working on Waterworks Park for bike trails, for dealing with the idea of using some of the buildings. People have bringing a lot of institutional knowledge to this. So we're very happy about that. The energy was great. It's funny, I'm always tend to be an in-person guy. And when I asked everybody to vote to do Zoom or in person, everybody put their hand up to be in person, which means that, hey, I think it's going to be a very energetic group to work with. So we're looking forward to reporting more as we come out, but there's a lot of great ideas been laid out. One of the things we're hoping to see is, a little bit more as we decide, as we learn what the building's conditions are, which ones would be slated for, mow downs to create other space. That's the kind of questions that are still out there for us. But as we all know, all those things are in play right now. So very happy to be part of this, and always happy to have other knowledge join us on this committee as far as our wonderful elected officials. So please, everybody who loves this idea, please chime in on the comments. We have so many great ideas already, but I'm sure there's more to be had.
Sounds like your committee will be some idea management, probably, Scott, because I'm sure you can't do everything all at once, obviously. Thank you for that report. And that concludes our subcommittee updates. I've heard from several members of subcommittees that one of the things they're wondering about is timing for when they should think through getting recommendations together, or how long they will be meeting. And as we've contemplated this, I think, we formed this committee last month in September, and we have been thinking the first phase of this will be about a year, and then we'll kind of reevaluate and see where we go from there. But now that we've got our master plan consultants on board, we're expecting that they hopefully will have a maybe initial draft report sometime by next summer. Cecily is nodding a little bit. Maybe
Yes,
yeah.
so right, we
Okay.
have a 12-month schedule, and I think that aligns fairly well with when we anticipate having a draft out to you all for first review, and we will, be revising it through. I would think it would run through November would be when we are anticipating concluding based on our proposed schedule.
Okay, fantastic. So as I think about guidance to give the subcommittees, it would probably be optimal if you all had on your radar getting subcommittee reports or recommendations together, I would say by the end of next spring, maybe May or June. And then that would give us chance to interact with those recommendations and the master plan before it was finalized, because certainly we want to have that be part of the influence, and then also give the county executive and the administration a chance to digest that while that master plan, those last couple months are underway. So if we want to think that through, we can certainly come up with a more fixed timeline, but since that's it's probably about 6 months in advance, we can just give that as informal guidance for now. And then also to our subcommittee chairs, if you do have any questions about process or how to interact with this larger advisory committee, or if you need logistical support, like you're trying to manage a tour or you're needing some data or information, feel free to reach out to me or to Hannah Dyer, who's the lead staff, and we will do what we can to support. And then just as a reminder, if any advisory committee members themselves want to get engaged in a particular subcommittee, please do reach out to that subcommittee chair. I'm almost guaranteed they'd be happy to have you. So at this point, we'll open it up to any advisory committee members. If you have questions, comments, or concerns that you want to get on the record, this is the time to do that. Okay, going once.
Oh, sorry, I'm trying to tune in. I'm not in my car finally.
Awesome.
So I've been listening the entire time though, and one thing that has occurred to me is, one of the wonderful things about Crownsville is that it's huge. We've got 500 acres that we're talking about, and a lot of structures that are already in place. Some infrastructure obviously needs to, needs significant updating. But one of the things I've just been thinking about is matching the needs of the different subcommittees or the work of the different subcommittees with physical spaces. And at what point, that matching sort of needs to happen. And so that's really sort of a process question, I guess, if that's something anyone else has thought about.
Yeah, that's a great question. And Councilmember, I think that's something that everybody's thinking about. My presumption is that as the master plan kind of enters its initial phase, they're doing inventory assessments along with some of the previous work. And so I think one of the nearer term outcomes will be a sense of what buildings are usable and which ones aren't. We also obviously need to overlay the historical easements on that discussion as well. So there's a lot of complexities there. And so that's a long way of saying we're not there yet, but I think we will be there in a nearer term than what we were talking about before, like a 6 month next spring, where we're looking at recommendations. So my hope is that in a couple months' time, we might be able to start thinking about that matching exercise.
Thank you.
Cicely, did you have something to add to that? Because I'm speaking for you in a way.
Right, no, that's fine. But you did a great job with that, right? So we are in the data collection and listening portion. RK&K, our civil engineer on the team, comes out in front of most of our work, where they're, looking at the infrastructure. We were out on site for over 6 hours yesterday. They'll have a full team doing survey work next week and probably over the next 3 weeks. So the initial phase of our work is, a 3 to 4 month period of getting a good understanding of the existing conditions, looking at the historic easement. We also have EHT traceries with us, and they'll be doing the historic assessment and really diving deep into that. And so gathering all that information sets the base. Part of that is listening to the subcommittees, also the public. We're maybe just throw this out there. We're looking at holding a first public, we'll call it a workshop, but it may not be termed that, maybe town hall, it may be, a different name, but in any event, an event with public to follow up on the town hall event. Maybe in January. We don't want to schedule it during, the winter holidays. So, probably would be, I'm guessing, mid-January, by the time we have enough of our documentation understanding to go back to the public so that they have, something to react to. We're not just going there having a town hall again, but it would be something where we're giving some information back. So we want to complete that phase 1 assessment and share that with the public, as well as have, open dialogue on what their current thinking is and desires for the space are. So all of that will be phase 1. Phase 2, as Chris noted, will be where we're really starting to get into, and we may do this ahead of time, depending on how much information we have, is starting to test ideas, right? So, is there a need for ball fields? Okay, we'll physically look at where those fit on site. We'll look at what buildings are slated. I don't know how you said it, Scott, but I'll use the word demolished only in this setting. And see what else could fit there, and and test out all of those different scenarios. And some will work and some will not physically work, and that will be some of the data we bring back to you. Some may need some more infrastructure improvements to accomplish. So our job is to test the ideas, tell you what the pros and cons are, tell you what might be the funding or costing implications of those decisions, so that you all can make decisions based on that.
Yeah, and that's a great segue to one thing that I was going to mention before we adjourn, and I think now is probably as good a time as any. We're looking at other topics to discuss at upcoming meetings, and one of them, of course, will be having Mike Stroud and the consultants explain a little bit more in detail what that master planning process is and what the committee's opportunities to interact with that will be. So we felt like we just got them on board. We didn't want to throw them up in front of everybody right at this meeting, but that's something we're looking at either the November, December meeting. Some other potential topics that we're considering are an overview of the utility structure issues that DPW could give to the committee, a similar kind of rec and park amenities discussion that department could lead, and then the facility assessment, buildings overview as well. So those are some future things. We haven't made a decision yet on what the November agenda will be, but we will be making that shortly. So if any committee members have a strong feeling of something that they would like to hear about at the November meeting, please reach out to Hannah and me, and we'll certainly take that under consideration as we look to set the agenda. Are there other committee member questions or comments?
Mr. Trumbauer?
Yes, Delegate Bagnall.
Sorry. I just wanted to sort of follow on with a couple of the comments previous, Councilwoman Rodvian, but also the comment about the nexus between subcommittees, because I understand, this is a very weighty process, and we have to have a way to sort of make it digestible. But there is a lot of overlap too within particularly between health and wellness and rec and parks. And so I just want us to be cognizant of how we can overlap some of those efforts. Because for instance, I know arts ended up in rec and parks, but we had a discussion about arts therapy and the value of that in health and wellness. We had a discussion about running tracks in health and wellness. So and I know it falls into rec and parks. So my question would be about how we can communicate across subcommittees, but also if, as we're looking at potential resources on that site, can we also look at what we have in the county and how far away those exist? For instance, when we were talking about the running track, there's no accessible running track in South County currently. So maybe as we're creating that list for consideration, we can also look at where those resources exist in the county, if they do, and the distance, since Crownsville is so central for most of Anne Arundel County.
Yeah, those are great questions. So let me address them. I'll take them in reverse order. So on your second one, if any committee members have subcommittee have data requests, like if you want to know, hey, can we map how far Crownsville is away for something, we can certainly see if we can get that using existing county resources. So we can work with our planning and zoning team, or I know that Rec and Parks even has some GIS capability within their department. So if you have data requests, I would either contact me or work through your subcommittee chairs on those specifically. Your first question about the kind of cross-cutting issues, I think, is an excellent one. We did struggle with that a little bit on some of the comments, like arts was a great example. Hannah and I talked about that, and we said it could do health and wellness, it could do rec and parks. So when I've encountered situations like this in the past with a committee structure, there's two ways that you can address this that I think could work. Number one, if you have the capacity, if there is an individual that could sit on both groups and serve as a liaison, that's optimal. But keeping in mind that many of the participants are volunteers or have full-time jobs, that they can't, maybe do all of that. The second best way might be to designate on each committee a liaison with another committee where they just touch base. So for instance, when, if someone's on the Rec and Park committee and they're designated as the health and wellness liaison, they can reach out to their counterpart before the meeting and say, hey, here's what's on our agenda. Is there anything you guys are talking about that you think I should bring up? And so you just formalize that link a little bit. So it's not up to someone just kind of saying, oh, maybe we should talk to these guys, right? So that's my two suggestions based on my kind of committee experience throughout my career, but I'm open to other ways as well. That's where I would point you in the direction.
Thank you very much.
But great point, and great example, because that was a real world one that Hannah and I talked about earlier. All right, so I don't see any other committee members making noise or hand raising icons that they want to have a comment. So at this time, I know we have at least one or two members from the general public that have joined, and if they have any comments, we'll entertain them at this time.
Hi, I'll start. I'm Celeste Seeger. I'm a resident of Crownsville. My husband and I are both on this call. We're very excited about the work that's getting started here. And I can speak myself. I certainly want to participate. I did private message Pam, not only as a resident, but I'm an assistant professor at the University of Maryland School of Nursing and a new board member to the Chrysalis House. And so the health and wellness is a very important, it's a committee that I'm also on at at Chrysalis House. So to see something happen here that really nurtures the heritage and also beautifies our community is very, very important to us. So we sort of found this committee by chance. And so I would also like to encourage some ways to get this community, because I know lots of residents are certainly excited to see something beautiful happen. So it's nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks, Celeste, for joining. Thanks for your participation. I will let committee members know this is our first Zoom, and we are looking at future Zooms being a little bit potentially different structure where we'll have the committee members be panelists and have other people join, be participants, and that will allow us to open it up to a wider audience. This one was our first one, and we didn't quite have all of the tech set up. So this has been a successful meeting, I think, at this point, though, but we'll make them even better going forward. So I think we've gotten through all of our business today. Like I mentioned before, we will be discussing in the coming days what the November meeting agenda will be, and we'll get that out to you all as soon as possible. But if you want to potentially influence that, just reach out to me or Hannah. I'll announce that our next meeting is virtual. It's on Thursday, November 16th at noon. And we'll look forward to seeing you all then. So with that, I will seek a motion to adjourn made by Delegate Smith and the second by Allison, and we are officially adjourned. We'll see you all in November. Thanks very much, and good luck with your continuing
real
work
quick.
on the subcommittee. Yes.
Real quick, now the meetings are November 16th. Senator Guile and I are doing a town hall at Baldwin Hall at 7 p.m. So if anybody wants to put it on their calendar. So